Good morning, everyone. It's Joker, and today we are back with another slime video. And today I'm going to be attempting to compare the potential damage output of the new incoming Protector Renard, leader of the Commander category, versus another of the very generic stacking Protectors. Because I have seen a lot of downplay already for this Renard. People are saying he's not strong enough. I will admit that he is, pretty boring because it's a blue stacking meta with no real true gimmick except for the Hinata triple hit. That's not Renard's problem though. What I'm seeing is that they don't really believe that he's going to do that much damage or help support teams in the long run. And to that, I say I believe those people are wrong. And that's because he is doing one very important thing, and that is double stacking effects. He is giving ult resistance down to the end of battle by 10% each stack, and he's giving everybody a 12% weakness strike buff. And the last time we had a double stacking protector was Light Shuna for New Year's of 2023, the final stacking meta before EXs became a thing. And she was very powerful. She's still one of the most damaging protectors in the game if you can activate everything. And, that's saying something being a year and a half old now. This Renard is coming in, and I believe he's going to eclipse that. One, because it's an EX meta, and you get that extra damage buff already, and because we have EX units. And he's less restricted than Shuna is. Because Shuna, you need someone to give you Pierce, and someone to give you Stun. Renard does not care. He's ult resistance down, which your requirement is you must ult. Okay, that's hard. And you must be type advantage, which if you're properly nuking, also not hard. So I want to do a very quick damage comparison test between another of the very generic stacking protectors, one that's not really active anymore because no one can get him, and that's Protector KONOSUBA Rimuru. And if you weren't playing during the KONOSUBA meta last year, he does something very generic. He raises ult damage by 20% every single time. And that's it. So on a stacking team where you go, 8 turns, you can get a lot of ult damage just from him that will then stack up with like Megumin's 80% or Jean's 100%. And you can really capitalize on that. And this used to be the best generic protector because this was better than Diablo and what he was doing. But we will use Diablo in this test as well. So we're going to run this team. We've got this stat. We're going to stack, so we're going to use Blanc because we're going to go into Light Veldora's Tempered Edge, who, he's the one that can survive this long of a test. And we're going to get Blanc's EX ult. Why Blanc? Well, because she gives herself 100% weakness strike, right? We don't care about synergy, we're not using that. But in order to make this test viable, I did some math, and based on a perfect run, we should get about 11 stacks of Rimuru, which equals 220% ult damage. So test number 1 is we're going to EX nuke with Blanc with 220% ult. And then we will come back, and we will do the equivalent number of stacks, which is 11 stacks, of what Renard would give, which would be 110% ult resistance down and 132% weakness strike, which we can't actually get to that exact number, so there will be a little bit of variance. But I just want to compare how much damage 11 stacks of this Rimuru will do versus how much damage 11 stacks of what Renard is going to do, and just do a science test. You can't, the numbers won't lie. So let's just go ahead and jump in. Okay, so here we are. We're on turn 7. Veldora's defense buff leaves on turn 8, and we're about to get our final stack. This gets us, or final 2 stacks. This gets us the EX ult for Blanc. Now, things that we have to keep in mind for this test is that Konosuba Rimuru's trait is that he lowers defense by 8% if you have lower than 70% HP, which we do. In the next test, when we use Diablo, he's giving us 8% attack under the same condition, which we know that is a little bit better. That's a lot better than defense. So there is more variance there that we have to account for. But we have 220% ult damage with nothing else, just Blanc's EX ult, and we're going to go ahead and send it, and we'll see what 11 stacks of this can help us do as far as damage output is concerned. Let's just go ahead and send it. All right, we'll watch the ult. So, obviously I'm recording this after the fact. I know which does more. I'm not surprised by it either. And, a lot of people probably shouldn't be, if they think about it really, really hard. So Blanc does 149. Let's go back. 149k with 220% alt damage. No other buff except that little bit of defense down. No weakness strike, no extra temporary alt damage, no attack buff, no synergy or crit or pierce or element buff or anything like that. Just raw alt damage and the EX alt. 11 stacks of it. So now let's come back in a mostly equivalent setting and let's compare what we can do when we get the same amount of stacks-ish that Renard would give us. Alright, so we're back, we're on turn 8, we're using Diablo now, and that's because he's lowering ult resistance by 15% each time. And so, we already have what number we should be at. So by using Diablo a set amount and then not using him anymore, we can get to the 110% ult resistance down on the dot. So let's go ahead and take a look. So right there, 110%. And that number comes from 11 stacks of Renard, who's doing 10% ult resistance down every time. 10 times 11, 110%. Okay, easy math right there. Nothing else is new there. But notice he doesn't have that defense buff. We now have a temporary attack buff. The little sword icon is blinking above us, so there is a bit of variance there. And you can see that also here when we go down, is that we have a 4% attack from the trait. But we have 40% weakness strike, and that's coming from Shizuka because she's buffing us by 20% each time. And that's as close as we're going to be able to get to even numbers, because once we use Blanc's personal buff, that's another 100%. So we're going to be at 140% weakness strike. Renard would only put us at 132%. So we are 8% higher on that as well. So we have a better trait buff from Diablo Protector than Rimuru Protector. So that's something to keep in mind. And we also have another 8% weakness strike than what we should technically have. But, when we nuke here, and you'll see, is that it's going to do a lot of damage. So 239 is what we hit. So 149 is the initial clip, and then Blanc comes in here with 239k. Now, if we account for the variances in the buffs, the attack buff being better and 8% extra weakness strike, I would round that number down to about 220k, somewhere around there, give or take. It's still a lot better than 149k. Like, a lot better. And that is just the power of double stacking buffs versus one singular buff. So, once you add all the other buffs to this, physical attack, element attack, all that other, once you add an actual alt buff to this number is going to skyrocket compared to what the baseline is that KONOSUBA RIMURU is giving, even accounting for slightly higher stats. So, I get why people are upset with Renard, because he is fairly boring. I think he's a better protector than Violet is. Like, no joke, I think he is a much better protector than what Primal Demon Violet is doing. Because Primal Demon Violet, her entire kit is only helping Space Blanc. And that is it. Because there's no other time you're going to nuke on a nuke team where you need to use a bunch of skills over and over and over and over and over again in one turn. Right? Most stacking teams are, you use 4 or 5 80-point skills and then you nuke and you call it good. So Violet, I think, on paper, she's like, oh, cool. And then in practice, she's like, I'm less impressed with this Violet than I am this Renard. So I have high hopes for him. The math checks out. I knew he was going to do more damage because of the power of double stacking, just like why Shuna was better than all the other single stacking protectors, because she's double stacking effects. And he is essentially Shuna 2.0, but even less restricted, because Shuna needs Pierce power, or Pierce rate, and someone to be stunned. Pierce power and stun strike. You need to be stunned to activate stun strike. You need to have Pierce to activate Pierce power. So the fact that Renard needs nothing of that, and just you want to ult and call it a day, is fantastic. But those are my thoughts. This is my initial science video. Of course, we will test out Renard in full when he does drop later tomorrow. And, I still expect good things out of him. So for the people that are underselling him, I really urge you to hold off on your final judgments until we see not only what Renard is doing, but what his entire team is doing versus, what Primal Demon Blanc and Jean, Sad Jean, and Violet are doing versus all the other blue stacking metas, and then make a not so biased decision. But let me know what you guys think of the science test. That's it for me. Take it easy, guys, and I will see you all tomorrow, or technically today when this video drops.